Where is that human? Damon, it's happening. The culmination of a dream.
What's that, Ish?
Did you watch it earlier this week? When they got on the stage and said the words? I could not help but imagine that it was the end of, what did you say last week? A dream.
Great observation, Ish. Yes, this week has definitely been the culmination of quite a few dreams. Unless you've been really far down the escapism hole for the past couple of weeks, you know that just this past week, history was made and changed. Short form is that the 46th president and the 49th vice president of the United States of America were sworn into office. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris both showcase what can happen when one dreams, and one is able to master the escapism one needs to achieve their dreams. For both of them, these dreams cover decades. Last week, these two dreams combined to give us a new reality. What becomes of it is for future historians to decide. But for right now, in this moment, there are infinite possibilities on what could happen. Dreams led to hope. Hope will lead to passion, which will lead to change. One finds hope when one escapes. Welcome to the Chronicles of Geek. I'm Damon Roth, your geek from the north. This past week, history has presented itself with the perfect example of how a lifelong dream can become a passion and then reality. It is not a secret that the new president of the United States, Joe Biden, has dreamed about Inauguration Day, this Inauguration Day, for many, many years. He has guided his dream into a passion that some would say bordered on obsession. We need to admit to ourselves that the line between passion and obsession is very, very narrow. If we forget to focus our escapism and we don't use it in moderation, it can easily help fuel a downward spiral. Howard Hughes and the like come to mind. Sometimes it takes the lens of history to show whether a person was a great dreamer or just obsessed to the point of ultimate destruction. In a future episode, we will look at what happens when escapism goes bad and how we can possibly avoid it. For now, the knowledge that dreaming and obsession are two sides of the same coin is a good starting block. If we go back and look at President Biden, it is easy to suggest that his quest for the presidency bordered on an obsession. He was a senator for longer than lots of us have been alive, though through all this time he never shied away from his dream of being president. Even when told no, repeatedly, he kept going. Only time will tell us, as it always does, whether this was a good thing, but you have to admit that he did reach his dream. When we look at Vice President Harris, however, we see a different culmination of dreams and escapism. For generations, legions of young women and matriarchs who have seen more life than anyone should, saw her taking the oath of office. And this was a shared dream. These women, mothers, sisters, daughters, have stood in front of mirrors, lunch counters, desks, the corner of meeting rooms, and outside the door, gaining courage. They've dreamed of equality, of success, of being able to be there. How many movies did VP Harris watch to build the confidence and the will to take on the world? I have no doubt she channeled Nichelle Nichols the morning of the 20th. At that same moment, a star got to have the moment that she had been dreaming for, where her dreams have helped inspire legions of fans to be brave, to be themselves. On that morning, without a doubt, Lady Gaga, a survivor of many fronts, drank her morning tea, strapped on a humongous bird, and said to herself, "I was still there." And somewhere, someplace, Matt Groening is dreaming again.
I have a question, if I may.
Of course, Ish. What's the question?
Okay, so this week I've been listening to every presidential speech, which is odd because they only start when something called radio showed up, and there's like 100 and some odd years missing. But last week you told me that the new technology, faxes, wasn't new. And you said it was actually invented before the telephone. So when did radio become a thing? I'm curious because it's how I communicate with the world.
You're right, Ish. The waves you use are a form of radio at its purest. As for radio with words and music, well... Welcome to Geek Flashback News. The existence of radio waves was theorized by Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell in the 1860s. Working with these theories, William Henry Ward received U.S. Patent 126356 in 1872 for a wireless telegraphy system where he theorized that convection currents in the atmosphere could carry signals like a telegraph wire. Contemporary history states that it was the Italian inventor Marconi that in 1895 provided the feasibility of radio communication. The Canadian inventor Reginald A. Fessenden on December 23, 1900 became the first person to successfully transmit audio over a distance of about 1.6 kilometers, 1 mile. And 6 years later, on Christmas Eve 1906, he became the first person to make a public wireless broadcast. Now, history buffs know, of course, that Nikola Tesla is now credited with being the first person to patent radio technology as the Supreme Court overturned Marconi's patent in 1943 in favor of Tesla's. Not the first time Tesla's ideas had been stolen. The first transcontinental broadcast was transmitted by radio in the year 1915, reaching across the continent from New York City to San Francisco and across the Atlantic Ocean. 5 years later, KDKA Pittsburgh broadcasted the Harding Cox election returns and began a daily schedule of radio programs. In 1927, commercial radio telephony service linking North America and Europe was opened. This has been your Geek Flashback News. Today's Geek Flashback News has been brought to you by Ripped Apparel. Use the promo code GNN10 for all your finer geek apparel needs. And don't forget to subscribe below to keep up on all your fan-fueled content.
Human, why is this old joystick in the box marked obsolete? Did it stop working? It's USB. It still connects to your new system. You didn't, replace it because it's old, did you?
No, Ish, of course not. It's going to storage because, well, it simply doesn't have enough buttons, gizmos to play the latest game that I want to play.
Ah, the ones with all the space fighters? Pew pew!
Yes, that one. Unfortunately, I discovered that my 20-year-old flight stick just isn't going to cut it.
Is that the gripe for this week? Technology that doesn't do all the latest stuff? I have you know that some of us like being vintage.
No, Wish, that's not the gripe. This flight stick has done more than its job, and maybe one day it'll find a new purpose or home. What the gripe this week is about packaging, and this time not a first world problem. In my humble opinion, the packaging of electronics is becoming a perfect example of corporate complacency and our willingness to accept it. Remember the old days where you could pick up a box and turn it to the back and not see a big blank space, but the specifications of what it is that you were looking at? Having the specifications on the box did two things. Once, it was that it gave us, the consumer, knowledge as to what the heck we were getting and to help us answer the question, will this do what I need it to do? The second, and perhaps the most important, is that it's the fact checker that allows us to keep the manufacturer honest. It is extremely easy for the old bait and switch to happen when you have no idea what is actually inside the box. The black market of electronics, the ones that are found sometimes at thrift markets and some local dollar stores, thrives on boxes that have no detailed information. The reason? Simply to look legitimate and have it so the consumer has no idea what's even supposed to be in there or if it's all there at all. This has been your Geek Gripe of the Week, brought to you by MetallicDice.com. If you're about to go down the rabbit hole and need the gaming tools to get you there, use promo code GNN for 10% off your gaming needs. For those of you that have been paying attention, I am a lifelong geek from the Great White North, Canada. The place where that Deadpool guy makes perfect sense. Heck, he's just Captain Canuck, the original Merc with a mouth. 2020 showed us just how important truth, honesty, integrity are in journalism, and yes, in social media such as this. One of my goals is to always be honest when something is my opinion, or if it's fact. Is why we provide the patent numbers in the flashback news. It gives you, the listener, a marker to leave the escapism, hopefully just for a couple seconds, jot it down, come back in, and research the fact later to see if what you've been told is true. Escapism, like we have mentioned, has been around since the dawn of time. And all too often we as a society have discovered that sometimes this escapism can have some very drastic consequences. It's why media is regulated, or at least attempted to be regulated. In Canada, every broadcaster needs a license to be renewed every so many years. And this process, folks, whether for or against, the application, businesses, stakeholders, and yes, Canadian taxpayers get to have their say. I believe at my core that a free and non-influenced media is the bedrock of what makes democracy works and what gives humans a fighting chance, individually and together. Now, quickly, since this will be needed knowledge in a bit, the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, is kind of like PBS and the BBC had a kid. Now, CBC fans, don't yell at me. I agree. It's not how it was supposed to be. It's just what it is right now. Last week, I had the opportunity, the privilege, to represent Canadians on the future of the CBC and what it means to us. The CBC has been part of Canada's national escapism for a long time. Shows like Hockey Night in Canada, our beloved Stuart McLean of the Vinyl Cafe, the Beachcombers, and Schitt's Creek have allowed Canada to escape together as a country. These are the words I shared on January 20th. Hello, and thank you for allowing me to attend this hearing on behalf of Canadians like myself. I am an Army brat, a father, a son, a Canadian. My father, an orphan by all sense of the word, was raised in Saskatchewan. Go north until you run out of road. Turn left. That's where he grew up. He was a soldier who gave everything for his country. He served in Germany at the height of the Cold War and never complained later in life about his time in Suffield in the 70s. He passed away barely 50 years old in 1999. He always had the CBC on, radio or TV. He lived for the Beachcombers and listened to the news each night. Hockey Night in Canada was our church. Why did he love the CBC? Because if it's on the air, he would say back in the 80s, then Canada is still free. Canada was still free. I didn't understand when I was 7 what that meant, but now I know it was more than just a foreign menace. It was also the ability to be free of influence from corporate overlords that waved the almighty dollar around, or an editor on the hook to his advertisers. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, funny, broadcasting, the word says it all, is future-proof. Radio, TV, interwebs, broadcasting. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation provides 2 services, information and escape. While its primary role is to bring the unaltered truth to Canadians from the Canadian viewpoint, its secondary and sometimes more important role is to help create venues where Canadians can escape together in a shared experience from the world around them. The CBC has been the beacon of hope for so many, in good times and in bad. I can remember a few years back when I had no home, when I was lost in the winds of Canada, struggling to find my way. And there was Stuart. There were stories of hope that were shared with my fellow Canadians, commercial-free, without influence of somebody telling me what to buy or think. But just Stuart, the stars out the window, and the knowledge that I wasn't alone, that across this country, some of my fellow Canadians were listening to it too. Just recently, I took to the internet with great joy and pride as a Canadian when Kim's Convenience took to the galaxy in a shared moment of joy when that X-Wing showed up. That's our Canuck. That's our hero. And we all knew it and told the world. We as Canadians are at the mercy of what it is on the interwebs and what's broadcast into our homes. We need strong, independent media, free of being beholden to corporations and small groups of individuals with money. Sponsored stories should be nothing more than dedicated stories on Canadians and what we do, our sports, our arts, our creations, our books. The corporations can get their free press somewhere else. I seriously ask why the CBC hasn't become the champion they could be. Like Eaton's and the Bay, the CBC has many times missed out on the opportunities that they alone, at the time, were able to capitalize on. How two mega companies couldn't figure out online shopping when they already had a catalog and the distribution network is actually not a mystery. Out-of-touch management, led by out-of-touch boards that forgot who they were to Canadians. The CBC could be Canada's YouTube, could be Canada's Spotify, a place where artists, producers, where all Canadians could have their content showcased, like we used to do on local CBC radio shows, where stars used to be born. In closing, I want to mention that yesterday, when the world changed, where did I turn? To the commercial-free network that was going to give me the best non-influenced opinion. Yesterday, I watched Joe Biden become president on the CBC. Thank you.
My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
The dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one.
Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. All right.
The rabbit hole of escapism does not need to be bad. It can and has provided the needed boost, inspiration countless times. President Biden and VP Harris embody the dreams and desires of this without a doubt.
Why are you making me think? My circuits hurt. I need a recharge.
Don't we all? I know that we had our moments where we have tuned out. I know you've have at least once this week. If we use the escapism of Star Trek, for example, we can see how it has been the venue for numerous fans to escape into a universe where they get to be themselves. From the first non-stereotypical role, to the first kiss, to being able to be who you are and know that it's safe to do so. The universe of that sci-fi property, from one man's escape, who knows where his brain was when he was in the middle of a war? But it's safe to say it was dreaming about a world full of peace and kindness. But that universe has led to so many other dreams coming true from those who escaped into it. Technology. Only the warp drive doesn't exist. Teleporters exist even if they can only move light. At the moment. Replicators? It's simply 3D printing, and yes, they print organs, so editable food isn't that far behind. Music? If you haven't checked out the Beverly Crushers, you really need to. You can download them and put them on your tablet, or communicator, sorry. I meant cell phone. Escapism? I really do need to visit the prototypical holodeck at the University of Illinois. One dream, the escape of one person, has affected everyone else on the planet. The movie Heavy Metal came from a tripped out watching of Star Trek the motion picture. The movie features in its opening scene, wait for it, a red convertible driven by an astronaut. And they say Musk comes up with all of his own ideas. I have no doubt in this geek-filled world that a young Vice President Harris escaped the realities around her into a tiny box and boldly went where no one had gone before. Watch Uhura, dreamt to conquer the stars, and perhaps one day be president. Until next time, I'm Damon Roth here, escaping with you on the Chronicles of Geek on the Geek News Now Network. Don't forget to subscribe, and always, my friends, stay safe, stay brave, and most of all, stay geeky.